on this episode of The Strange Medicine of Alice Strange. Thus far, my best spell was to freeze the cancer that my first love and lifelong friend has. We talk all the time about mundane over magic. I think often another good phrase like that is passive over aggressive. You weren't trying to change anything about anyone else. You were focusing on yourself. And this is a great example of how the first thought we have of this person's bothering me, this person's annoying me, what do I do with this? I think often the first response is they have to stop, but there are other solutions. Welcome, seekers, to The Strange Medicine of Alice Strange, the podcast where modern science meets with what lies beyond what we can see. Here, we delve into psychology, spirituality, science, and the occult. Each episode will explore the bigger questions of existence, the nature of the soul, our internal world, and how we can understand them through spirituality and magic. This podcast is a sanctuary for the soul. Alongside science and spirituality, we also learn the power of compassion and the magic of extending kindness to others. For in the act of giving, we receive. In the act of teaching, we learn. This is a journey into the depths of the mind as well as the heart, where every lesson is a step toward oneness, every insight a bridge to understanding, and every act of kindness a spell that transforms the world. So join me, Aliceestreastrange, on this journey of self-discovery, scientific wonders, ancient knowledge, and finding the strange medicine within yourself. Hello, seekers. This is the Strange Medicine of Alice Strange podcast, and I am Aliceestreastrange. I'm a psychic development and self-development coach, and I help people become their best selves and up their spiritual game. And on this podcast, we explore where spirituality, psychology, science, and magic intersect. So, it is fall, and if you're catching this with video, you will see that I am wearing a sweater today because I am really feeling that autumnal vibe. But you know what else autumn is good for? Autumn is good for slowing down, going inward, and reflecting. I think reflection is such a great way to figure out how to be our best selves. And you may have heard me say this before, but I believe that through sharing our experiences in witchcraft with others, everyone gets to grow. So today we are going to Reddit to find spell success stories. And I do have a confession to make. I like Reddit a lot. I've been on Reddit for like 13 years, and while it does have many downsides, there are some small corners of Reddit that are actually pretty cool communities. Our Witchcraft is one of them, and that is where these stories are coming from today. Now, I've been wanting to do one of these for a really long time, and I'm so excited to get to try it out with you guys, so we're gonna get into that. But if you like this idea, or if you want me to do a different topic or subreddit, let me know in the comments below wherever you're watching. And while you're at it, go ahead and give the podcast a little like. It helps out so much, and I so appreciate it. And lastly, if you are interested in joining a free community of spiritual and magical people, I have a Patreon community and a Discord server where you can come and hang out with me and get exclusive content and events. It's such a great place, and I would love to see you there. I also have a complimentary PDF download all about energetic shielding. It's a collection of all of my years of research on energy shielding, plus my personal experiences over the past 19 years of practicing energy work. This is a fantastic tool for empaths or highly sensitive people that will guide you through 7 different methods, plus a deep dive into how to use crystals for shielding, and how to charge, cleanse, and put intentions into them. If you don't know how to charge a crystal with a specific intention, or you want to learn more methods, I highly recommend downloading this guide. All you have to do is click the link below, put in your email address, and the download will be sent your way. It's something I use every day of my life and has made my life much easier. So if you're ready to find peace and be unaffected by anything outside of yourself, go ahead and download it now. Now, let's read some witchcraft success stories. This is an Our Witchcraft, and it's titled, I Did a Patience Spell on Myself and It Changed My Life. Almost 5 years ago now, I had a coworker who I worked with literally 5 days a week for 8 to 9 hours at a time in a restaurant. We were both line cooks. And she drove me absolutely crazy, and she knew it, and would do anything she could to make me more annoyed and try to get me to blow up on her. But I didn't want to be like that, but I was at the point of tearing my hair out. I almost did a spell to make her be more quiet or something, but my mom, who also practices, told me that that was a bad idea, and I should only ever do spells on myself, the general, or people who were aware and consented to it. Good advice. So I instead decided to do a spell of patience on myself, Like, she can't annoy me if I'm too patient and calm, right? So I made an herbal mixture, brewed it into tea, and then drank it while sitting under the moon thinking patient and kind thoughts. And by the gods, it worked. It worked so well. The next time I worked with said coworker, she was in a real bad mood and kept trying to bother me, but it wasn't working. I wasn't even faking it. I just wasn't bothered. And it wasn't even just for that coworker. I felt more patient in general. I could wait 2 weeks or a month for a package and not care. I could tell someone the same instructions for a task at work 10 times and not get annoyed that they kept asking. I could wait for the new season of my favorite show and only be excited for the new plot lines. I could even sit in traffic, and I was grateful for the extra time to listen to my podcasts or audiobooks. Now, years later, I think about this often, and I'm so glad I received good advice and followed it. Having more patience has truly made my life easier and less stressful. I highly recommend trying something like this on yourself if you find yourself in similar situations. I just researched the herbs that gave patience and kindness, and if they weren't edible, I put them in a spell jar. But most were, so I just drank the tea. I really love this. We talk all the time about mundane over magic. I think often another good phrase like that is passive over aggressive. I think it's important to do everything we possibly can before stepping into that, trying to be aggressive or control or manipulate. That is something that should be avoided if you possibly can. So that's my little tidbit from this story. I also love that this was advice given to her by a mentor, or her mother in this case. Mentors are so important for people in the spiritual and witchcraft type arts. I think oftentimes we can get a little aimless or a little lost, and people who have been through it before can really, really help with those situations. And I love that this was mostly just a tea that she brewed and sat under the moon and drank. Sometimes the best spells aren't long or complicated. They're just full of intention and done just the right way. Then a comment that was under this story. Someone said, I love this. You didn't erase or dim someone's voice. You just gave yourself permission to be relaxed under difficult circumstances. I applaud you for this, and a huge respect to your mom for having the wisdom. Exactly. You weren't trying to change anything about anyone else. You were focusing on yourself. And this is a great example of how the first thought we have of this person's bothering me, this person's annoying me, what do I do with this? I think often the first response is they have to stop, but there are other solutions. Get creative. That's my takeaway from this. Get creative about the way you think of things in situations. So here is our next story. Someone is sharing their success spell story, and they write, my best magic was when I was looking for purpose and meaning in my life. I was in my dark night of the soul during the pandemic, but I found myself as a bodybuilder and it changed everything for me. I remember I set an intention in the beginning to become a better version of me, and I think God has heard me and helped me out with that. I literally became a new person and was reborn. Now I'm healthy, have been without depression and attempts for 2 years, and almost about to finish college. I'm learning how to drive, and things that hurt me so much, I forgot about them. And then there's an edit. One thing that changed it all was standing up for myself. I did that and began exercising as retaliation. So the magical equivalent would be baneful magic. I stood up to the voices, to the pain, to the years of abuse, and to the people who wronged me and showed them I can do it all on my own without them. I am happy now. I really, really love the point in here that this person made about this exercise as a retaliation being similar to baneful magic, but it's toward those dark thoughts, the depression, the heaviness. It was an attack. It was an aggression push away, but towards a non-physical part of themselves. So yeah, it is like baneful magic, but I think the best way. And I also like that it wasn't just like a spell, like a candle spell or a jar or something. It was making daily activities spells, making the daily go about your day activities into energy that feeds your spells. I think that's a beautiful kind of way to make your spells really, really potent, is make an intentional tea, work out with an intention. You're generating energy and creating things all the time. That's a really good takeaway. It's kind of just like that constant flow is a lot of energy to pour into a spell. It's a constant feeding to this spell. Then there were some comments asking this person exactly how this spell worked. So they elaborate. I first set my intention of what I wanted that came from my heart. I meditated to meet Goddess and used positive affirmations and inner child healing / shadow work. I also did various spells along the way to help me bodybuild. I for sure always sent negative energy into the earth every time I exercised. That way it'd be healed and give me back positive energy. All of this constant activity fueled me forward until I was in the doctor's office and had an epiphany that this is what I was meant to be, to help others heal along their paths too. Beautiful. When I'm at a crossroads, I like to talk to Hecate. She is the goddess of the crossroads. We love Hecate around here. There are many guided meditations to help you meet your deity or spirit guide or even your power crystal. I recommend trying them. That note about sending negative energy into the earth, this is so good for healing, for any kind of ick energy, because the earth is naturally neutralizing. Dirt is neutralizing, and the earth holds a lot of power. So pushing, I like to use dirt in my spells, just like with salt to like absorb and neutralize. But pushing anything negative down into the earth is a way to transmute it into a good energy that will then feed the earth and everyone on it. Then someone asked this person what they would even call this kind of magic. And they said, exercise magic, I guess. It was a lot of prayer, meditation, meeting with goddess, spells that contained my intention and for energy, and manifesting the bodybuilder my little toddler in me always wanted, since he was, well, a toddler. Instead of manifesting a body to attract all the guys and get popular and have lots of relationships, I did it for the little boy in me that was abused as a baby and never had a hero. And that hero became me. I love that. If anything, it was a ton of shadow work, and I was also still going to therapy at the time and taking my medications, but it wasn't one type of magic that did the trick or a spell, but a consistent flow of constant work of various spells, exercise, treatment, inner work, and meditation. I personally believe everyone has a reason for being here. Everyone has purpose, and one day you'll find it, but everyone is important. If I had to choose one spell to get started on personal development like this, it would be finding your passions. Follow the breadcrumbs in your life and make the dreams you had as a kid come true. Do the things that make your weird little heart happy. Stand up for others, and most importantly, rise above the darkness you're going through and be the light you need when no one else was there. Heal. And heal, not because someone tells you to, because you want to. Through your own healing, others will be inspired and find a map that leads them out of their own darkness. Kind of like me telling you this right now. I love all of this. This is so sweet. This is very Hecatean energy. If you guys haven't seen my episode on how I work with Hecate and some of her channel messages, this is definitely the kind of information I get from her and the vibe I get from other Hecateans. So love that. But in general, this is really wonderful advice. This inner child work, this really doing the 3D mundane things, therapy, whatever you need to do to get yourself on track in conjunction with spell work. I think spell work isn't always a solution, but it often pushes things a little further. It enhances what you're already doing in the 3D world to make it more powerful, and sometimes to sway the odds in your favor. But I personally found inner child work to be huge in my shadow work journey. So anyone who's going through it, try the inner child work. That stuff is magic. No pun intended. I also want to point out that this is something in psychology called post-traumatic growth. So when you have a traumatic experience, and in PTSD, we see people really struggling with the heavy parts, being in the heaviness and not thriving. With post-traumatic growth, this is when you take a traumatic experience and make it a positive. So this person took their own traumas, transmuted them, and worked toward coming out a better person because of it, not just despite it. And I think that's such a powerful, powerful thing. Post-traumatic growth is one of the most beautiful things I think as people we do, where we can take the most difficult situations, the most heartbreaking, and really come out better for it. I just feel that it's a magical thing that people do naturally, and I love hearing little stories like this. Okay, then our next thread is, what are your best stories about spells that worked? And we have someone who posted, I am quite new to the craft, so I've only done a few spells a couple times, so my story isn't that incredible. I put a spell on my bracelet that repelled bad energies, and it worked really well, but also in a really different way to how I thought it would. One of the biggest examples was in school. I started getting dumped by my toxic friends. And in the end, I actually found a really positive group of people. My mental health also started getting better, and I just started feeling so much better afterwards. Before that, I didn't even know witchcraft could do stuff like that. Yeah, that's a really interesting spell success. It's not a backfire because it worked, but very unexpectedly. And then there's a comment here. I've noticed that as a newbie as well. We get results that we may need, not necessarily the way we want. I think accuracy comes with time and learning to focus our energies. I think time and experience practice can help you hone in those little unexpected moments, but my opinion on this is our guides, ancestors, beings on the other side, deities, whoever you work with, angels, they kind of take the wheel sometimes and do what's best for us. And even with time and practice, spells can still do this. Sure, we get better, we hone them in. Yeah, that helps. But when working with energy, sometimes what's meant to happen will still happen. I like to think of spells as putting energy out into the ethers and getting energy back. And the universe sometimes makes things happen how they're meant to, not how we want. They have our best interest in mind, so it doesn't always show up how exactly we want, because the universe is like, all right, I got this one. Don't worry. You want healing? Let me give you some healing. And it happens to everyone. It really does. And our next post, I've been practicing witchcraft for over 20 years, and I have some fun stories. Once I did a spell ritual with my friend. She came to my house with some ingredients having all to do with crows. We were working some kind of death and rebirth concept. I honestly don't remember the exact information. It was over 10 years ago, and this is an example of how a spell can go sideways. My daughter, Mary, was 19 at the time and away at college, but we shared a room in our house for our altars, supplies, and practice. My friend and I planned to enchant some items of crow jewelry, and I used a small bowl that was among our supplies to hold the crows. We did the ritual and then wore our enchanted crow jewelry out to a party. While I was there, Mary called me and informed me that she was at that moment being tattooed. That was rather surprising, as this child considers and ponders and plans everything to death, not a spontaneous kid. She said she suddenly wanted a small tattoo of a crow. She said she hoped I wouldn't be mad at her, and I thought, I hope she won't be mad at me. Turns out the bowl I used for the crows was a dedicated part of her regular altar, which was packed up while she was away at school. I love this. I love this so much. The bowl became a sort of tag lock. So if you don't know what a tag lock is, it's usually a piece of DNA, hair, spit, skin, nails, something. It can also be a picture of a person. It can also be an object from a person. And this is used to tie a person to the spell. You can put your hair in a jar for healing if you want to heal yourself, that kind of thing. And that bowl was attached to her energy. It was one of her objects, so it became a tag lock. And I think that's so funny. That's great. I love that one. And our next story. I had some friction and animosity between the neighbor 2 doors down from my house. She had gone as far as beating on my door so hard that the door came open. She threatened my home, my partner, and my dogs, and the cops did nothing about it. That night, I ate a strong cannabis edible and meditated on a solution. After a while, I had written up and gathered the materials for quite the serious protection ritual for my home and property. After completing the working and closing the circle, I don't know if it was just being very high on edibles or the working or what, but somehow I knew it worked. There was like a snapping sensation energetically. She left us alone for a couple weeks. One night we were sitting outside with one of our dogs waiting for her to do her business, and the nasty neighbor walked up to the next door neighbor's door and knocks on the door. My dog barked at her. I told her to hush and leave it. The woman started going off on me, talking about hurting me and my dogs. I told her to please just leave us alone, and she stormed off the neighbor's porch and down to my front fence gate. She threw the gate open with such force that it rattled the fence loudly, and she stepped forward as if she were about to charge at us. In that moment, I remembered that I had put a line of black salt in the gate entrance during my protection spell. In the same moment, the woman appeared to hit an invisible wall or a glass door that stopped her mid-step, and her face went blank for a moment. She promptly turned and continued her charge while cussing and threatening us down the sidewalk to her own front door and went inside. By next month, we saw a U-Haul truck outside and she moved away. I've had a lot of magic work, but in more subtle ways. This was the most validating and dramatic result of my spell work and is the moment I go back and read about in my journal when I'm struggling with self-doubt. That's some powerful wards. That's some powerful protection. The snapping sensation energetically that they mentioned. People who feel energy strongly can sometimes really notice when a spell takes effect, especially if it's a really strong spell, if there's a lot of energy in it. So think about you're in a room with someone, you're not looking at them, you're not talking to them, and you can just tell they're in a bad mood. Or when you're just somewhere and you feel someone looking at you, that's sensing energy. We're all doing this all the time. But people who work with energy a lot often become a lot more sensitive to it. And that's what I think that snapping sensation probably was. And I also really love that she mentioned looking back at this in her journal when she was struggling with self-doubt. That is a great reason to keep notes over your spells. Sometimes they have unexpected effects. Sometimes they have wonderful effects. And I think we can learn a lot by looking over what we've done in the past. And I don't know if you've ever done a spell. For those witches out there, I don't know if you've ever done a spell and then it's very successful and then you don't remember what you did in the spell. So frustrating. So I'm always talking about take notes. Take notes. Even if it's just a quick one, take notes, friends. And we have another story. And she writes, thus far, my best spell was to freeze the cancer that my first love and lifelong friend has. I did it in January using paperwork with his diagnosis on it. I don't remember the exact wording of what I wrote over it 9 times, but basically something like, name is cancer-free. Then I bound it with twine, making 9 knots. I had some moon water from the most recent lunar eclipse in Scorpio, so I brought a bottle of that with me. Supposedly, it had chaos energy properties. I figured it'd cause the cancer some chaos. I put that into a plastic container and stuck it way back in his freezer with the instructions never to defrost or open it. Since then, he's doing great with treatment. There's been no additional tumor growth. He's married his long-term girlfriend and they just returned from a Caribbean cruise. So far, so good. Then a comment to this story. I'm just starting to learn about witchcraft, so please forgive my ignorance, but a genuine question, what happens if, God forbid, the power goes out and it thaws? Can you never ever thaw it? And OP responds, if my power went out, I would put it on ice immediately. I don't know what would happen, to be honest. This is very fascinating, very fascinating. People talk about freezer spells. I think that's a fairly common spell people talk about. And we usually think of freezer spells being to do with like a person, like get a person out of here. But you can use freezer spells for negative entities in your home. You have a haunting or something, that works. But literally anything that you want to freeze in its tracks, I think that's a great use of a freezer spell. But the question of what would happen if it thawed, I've never thought about what to do in that situation. I mean, you're usually freezing a person, so you can often just dispose of the spell ingredients as you would otherwise. But with something that's still in the person's body, that's so fascinating. I think you probably would be best to keep it frozen forever. I mean, you could possibly dump it in some running water. Honestly, you could probably do a spell to neutralize or transmute the energy you've contained. I don't know exactly how you would go about that, but I think it's possible. I don't know. If anybody has any ideas of how you would do that, if that's a thing that you've experienced or you have an idea on, I would love for you to comment that down below. Okay, on to the next one. Someone posts, what is your most successful spell? For me, it was a spell that I cast on myself when I was trying to forget an ex after a horrible breakup, which was on my mind constantly. It involved writing their name on a piece of paper and washing it until the name disappeared. Within days, I had stopped thinking about them completely. It was a simple yet incredibly powerful spell for me. Yeah, I love this spell idea. It's so creative. Sometimes the simplest spells do work the best. I think when we do a spell that's very large, lots of components, lots of moving parts, we can get kind of lost in the sauce. Like, it's hard to pour so much energy into a million different things going on in one spell. So sometimes a simple spell is very effective because you can really hone in your energy into one little action. Washing it off the paper. I love that. And then someone replies to this thread by saying, "Unfortunately, my best spell was a revenge spell. I was working on getting an opportunity in the visual arts field to get my work exposed to over 100,000 people. A so-called friend messed with it, saying lies to the person in charge, and I lost it. This person said to a friend in common she was messing up my partnership, who in turn told me. The so-called friend was also a visual artist, so she was overbearingly flirting with the organizer's Twitter and IG comments. It was ridiculously pathetic to see my opportunity of a lifetime slip away like that due to envy. So I did a spell full of anger after reading one of her comments on his Instagram post, and we know emotion is a powerful force. I left it open to the universe to do what it sees fit that is of equal measure, a return to sender of sorts. 3 months later, she fell down and broke her arm. It broke so bad that she had to do physical therapy for 14 months, in which she couldn't paint. My understanding is that she took away 14 months in advancement of work from me that I should be getting with my partnership, 14 months that I would have guaranteed work. I really hope I can do such a powerful spell for money. Yeah, anger is an incredibly powerful emotion. I did a whole video on my own experience with anger messing with a spell and kind of the lessons involved in that. So if you're on YouTube, I'll put a link up here so you can watch that. If you're on the podcast, it's episode 53. And that 14 months thing, that's wild. I think the universe often has little magical surprises, and often our magic does surprise us. The way it can be so accurate. Fascinating. Well, that was our last story. I hope you enjoyed this format of podcast. Comment below what topic you would like me to cover from Reddit or what subreddit. I would love to check them out. I've been posting more witchcraft videos on my YouTube channel that don't make it to the podcast. So if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, be sure to do that. It'll be in the description. And as always, be well, be kind, and may your curiosity for this world and the next never fade.